Congressman Conor Lamb. Congressman, thank you, sir, very much for speaking with me. I do appreciate it.
Good to see you, John.
So let me ask you about this week's Democratic convention. Normally, you'd be in Milwaukee, but I take it you're right home here in Pittsburgh.
I am. Yeah, this is a different kind of year, obviously, and this will be a very different kind of convention. But you know, there's going to be something kind of fun and experimental and exciting about it too.
Do you think people are going to watch?
I think so. You know, a lot of people are at home, and people tend to be curious about something that's new. So one of the complaints about conventions always tends to be, oh, it's the same old thing they've been doing, you know, for 100 years. And so we finally have one that's different. I think people are curious to see how it goes.
Well, I know one thing that's different is that you, as a relative newcomer to the Congress, will be part of this convention. Can you explain what your role is going to be?
On Tuesday night, there is a group of us, about 16 or 17 of us from around the country, both federal officials like myself, and then also some state and local officials of all different types and backgrounds, who are all kind of contributing to the same speech. And so you'll see how it turns out on Tuesday night, but we basically are all delivering lines of one larger speech because the technology allows you to do that. And I think it's a way that Vice President Biden is choosing to demonstrate that he has a lot of support among young people of a lot of different types, you know, whether that's geographic or racial or men and women or people from different wings of the party. We're all kind of combining into this one product to help show, you know, how broad and diverse the Democratic coalition really is.
Can you give us some idea of what this speech is all about?
Really, it's about leadership and having a plan is how I would sum it up. We're in the middle of a crisis that, you know, is probably going to be a once in a generation or even once in a lifetime type of challenge to our republic. And a lot of people feel that the present administration just doesn't really have a plan, that they're just kind of like, you know, taking one day after the next and lashing out or throwing different ideas out there every now and then, but there's no real serious, stable leadership that's breaking this thing down into its parts and attacking it and trying to achieve victory. And I think that's what Vice President Biden is really going to be emphasizing this week, that he has a plan and he feels responsible for executing that plan to save people's lives and get this economy back on track. And so our speech is just going to be about the importance of having a plan.
Well, there's no doubt having a plan for whatever it is you're engaged in is a helpful thing to have. The plan for this Democratic convention, apparently, is to still have some prominent speakers each and every night. And forgive me, you may be one of them, but I won't classify you in the same as ranks of Bernie Sanders or Michelle Obama. It's my understanding they're speaking tonight. Do you have any sense of what we're going to get from them? Or what do you hope we do get from them?
I don't have any sense of what they're going to be saying specifically, but what I think this convention really is, you know, people have to remember, we are just now nominating Joe Biden to be our candidate for the White House. That's when that becomes official. And so what this week as a whole is going to be is our chance to highlight what I think Joe is kind of most known for and most committed to, which is this idea that, you know, no matter how much money you make, no matter who you are or where you came from, there's a basic set of values that makes us all American. And it has to do with working hard to get ahead, being generous and kind toward others, looking out for people who get stepped on or counted out. And that's kind of the story of Joe's life. And so I think regardless of who the specific speaker is on an individual night, I think you're going to be hearing a lot about the middle class and rebuilding the middle class as part of our response to this pandemic.
Well, your remarks just then certainly reflect, I think, comments you made in the New York Times yesterday, where the reporter basically talked, as we have for months, about how critical Western Pennsylvania is in a Biden election strategy. Can you tell us again, Congressman, why it is you think Joe Biden, who is often portrayed as far left by the Republicans, really fits Western Pennsylvania values?
Because in real life, Joe Biden was born in Scranton and raised there, and he's been coming to Western Pennsylvania years meeting people, meeting union members, talking to teachers, talking to moms with children. I mean, he'll talk to anyone he can find. And in reality, not on, the web and not inside of Republican commercials, but in actual real life, he has gotten to know our people and understand what we believe and what we stand for. And he has said it a million times. It's the same as what he grew up with in Scranton. So I think there are very few parts of the country that have that same close connection with him as we do. And I think that's why you're going to see they can attack him as much as they want. They did a lot of that same stuff to me 2 years ago. And yeah, they land some punches, they leave some bruises, but ultimately I just think the people around here can separate fact from fiction. They know what the truth looks like. And, all Vice President Biden is saying is that he wants to come in and make a change and really try to lead us out of this situation that we're in. And I think people are going to listen to him when he says that.
So you believe that there are men and women in Western Pennsylvania who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 who are going to vote for Joe Biden in 2020?
Yes.
And what is it that would make them switch their votes from Trump to Biden?
Well, I mean, I think in each case you have to ask them, but one thing that is different this time is that voting for Vice President Biden is a vote for change. In 2016, a lot of people believed that voting for Trump was a vote for change because they looked at Secretary Clinton as a continuation of the administration that came before, and they weren't happy with that for whatever reason. But now we have 4 years of a record with this administration, and they haven't fulfilled the basic promises they made when it came to, how they were going to deal with people's jobs here. They're not protecting Social Security. They're actually taking from the trust fund as we speak. And the most important, obviously, is we have faced a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, which was no one's fault. It wasn't the administration's fault that this thing came along. But their response is their fault, and it has not been good. We have not led the world in our response to this pandemic. We have performed very poorly. And like we talked about earlier, there's just no plan. It's hard to see how that's going to change while this administration remains in office. And so I think people will vote for a change. Even if Vice President Biden isn't the person they dream of being in the White House, even if he's not their favorite, I think people will give him a chance because he's kind of somewhat humbly going to the American people and saying, I'd like to make a difference. I have a plan. I'd like to have a chance to make it work.
Finally, Congressman, let me ask you about Speaker Nancy Pelosi is calling you all back, the House representatives back to Washington. Well, first off, what's your understanding of when you're going to get back, and what is it you intend to do when you're back there?
It looks like we're going to go back on Saturday because that's a day that's in between the two parties' conventions. The Republicans would be starting their convention next Monday, and I think she wanted to extend them the maximum courtesy of trying to fit this in between the two parties' conventions. When we go back, we intend to vote on a bill that will basically just freeze in place the rules and policies of the Postal Service as they were before this new Postmaster General came to town and started messing with everything. So, we've had a lot of successful holiday seasons, elections, various things that challenge the Postal Service, and they've gotten it done the way they're supposed to before this guy came along. And all of a sudden, he thinks there's a huge problem with them getting mail delivered on time. So we're going to say, we're going to go back to before you, freeze all that in place. We're going to have this election. We're going to finish the pandemic, get to a vaccine, make sure people are taken care of and they can get their drugs all the way throughout. And then if sometime in the future we have to change anything about the Postal Service, then so be it. But right now it's definitely not the time. And by the way, we think we're going to get a lot of Republican votes for that bill on Saturday. It won't just be a partisan exercise because the Postal Service isn't partisan. I mean, there's nothing more all-American than that.
What worries you most about what's going on at the post office right now?
I think what worries me the most is the fact that what appears to be being done is just so cruel, and it so misunderstands the role of this institution in American life. Yes, it's about the election, but we already have reports of people with diabetes who are getting their medications several days late. Like, it's no exaggeration that to say because of what's happening here, someone could get sick or even die because they refused to support this necessary, vital public institution the way it's supposed to. And I just, no matter how things get, I tend to think we all have a reserve of common sense and decency that can prevent stuff like this. But for someone like this to come into office and do that kind of damage, it's just, it's just wrong. And I think you're going to see a swift and, a very steady response to this. Again, not just from Democrats. There's a lot of people who are upset about this.
Well, you may be right about the bipartisan nature of what happens in the House, but nothing can become law without the U.S. Senate. Do you have any understanding of what might happen in the Senate if the House passes this kind of a bill?
Well, there were administration officials and others on TV yesterday saying that they would support a postal service bill, especially if it were done in isolation. So I think what they're saying is that when we were negotiating a larger coronavirus bill recently, that there were other issues that were keeping that bill from going forward. And so if we could deal with the Postal Service on its own, that they would support that. And so we're going to give them that opportunity on Saturday by passing a Postal Service bill on its own. And we are going to do everything we can to have them pass as well.
But of course, it still leaves outstanding the failure of the Congress to come together on another coronavirus relief package. And I don't have to tell you that there are a lot of people out there hurting as a result of the failure of the Congress, the House and Senate, to come together. Is there going to be any effort at all when you come back, as short as it is, to try to do something, or are you just going to go back home for another couple weeks and nothing happens until after Labor Day?
I think that the negotiations are resuming this week before we even go back. So, of course, most of us, if there were any opportunity at all to pass a new bill and get people the help they need on unemployment or even their local government's budget or whatever it is, reopening schools, we would go whenever we had to and stay till whenever we had to get that done. But we need to see a breakthrough. And so far, I think the administration's message that they want to deal with these things in isolation means it's going to be a little bit slower. And we're going to keep pushing. I think people need to know that, the House Democrats have already offered to come down by essentially a third of their initial offer in these negotiations, and they've still been met with no, accommodation on the other side. So they're going to have to keep pushing, but we will do whatever it takes to get help to people that they need.
And then finally, back to the convention. I'm assuming you, like everybody else, will be watching the convention on TV tonight and this week?
Yes.
That's the plan. Are you going to miss not being there?
Well, I wasn't there last time. I mean, I'm still new to this business, and it gives us all something to look forward to for the future, I think. But given everything that has happened this year, I'll be happy just to be healthy and safe at home with my family, to be honest. And we can save all the celebrating for 2024, I guess.
Absolutely, and I hope I'm around to be with you then too. So, well, Congressman Conor Lamb, very much appreciate the chance to be with you again today. Thank you, sir, very much for spending time with us.
Thanks, John.
You know when you have that feeling when you see something from the past?
The past is the past.
How'd you know all these things?